So we're live now and I'll begin the recording.
Okay, sure, thanks. I think we can also admit the participants.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Education USA's US University Prepathon session. Today's topic is strategies for a successful return to India, career and cultural readjustment after a US degree. At this point in time, I would just like to highlight a couple of housekeeping notes that are mentioned on the slide. As you can see on your screen, we'd request participants to please use headphones for enhanced audio quality. Please mute your audio and switch off your video for a good webinar experience. This session is being live streamed on 2 platforms. So for participants who are joining us on Zoom, we'd request you to type your questions in the chat box. And for participants who are joining us via YouTube, the Education USA India YouTube channel, we'd request you to post your questions in the comments box. At the end of the session, we will try to answer as many questions as we can, and we'd request participants to keep the questions relevant to this particular session. We will also post a variety of links to resources and handouts in the comment section, so you can watch out for that and you can always copy paste them for your reference later on. On behalf of Education USA, we'd like to congratulate all the students who received their admits. A very big congratulations to you. I'm sure that you are all excited to join your US university either during this fall intake or next year's spring intake. If you've been following our US Prepathon series, you're already aware that we started this series in the month of June. And we covered a variety of topics. And as you can see on your screen, today's session is actually the last session, which is part of the Prepathon series. In case you've missed out on attending any of the sessions, don't worry, you can always check our Education USA's YouTube channel to view the recordings that we've already posted. Before I dive into the main part of the presentation, I'd just like to give you a brief introduction about Education USA for those participants who are not aware about the organization and the services that we provide. So Education USA is your official source on US higher education. And the reason why we are the official source is because we are a program that is supported by the US Department of State. Our mandate is to provide accurate, comprehensive, and current information. And we have a very wide network of over 430 centers in over 175 countries. In India, we have 8 centers in 7 cities, which is hosted by 4 different organizations. So the centers in Chennai, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Mumbai, and New Delhi, they are hosted and managed by the United States India Educational Foundation, which is USIF. USIF is a binational entity that also manages the Fulbright Fellowships in India. Our Bengaluru Center is managed by Yashna Trust. The Ahmedabad Center is managed by the Indo-American Education Society, IAES. And our newest center in India, which is in Hyderabad as well, is managed by the Y-Axis Foundation, YAF. So at Education USA, we divide the entire US university admissions and applications process into these 5 steps. Some of you might already be aware of these steps because you might have attended our orientation session, or you would have been advised by one of our Education USA advisors. So just to recap, step 1 is researching your options and shortlisting your universities. Step 2 is financing your studies and planning your budget. Step 3 is completing your application and submitting all the documents to the US universities. Step 4 is applying for your student visa. And step 5 is preparing for your departure. And the US University Prepathon series, commonly known as the pre-departure orientation, is part of step 5. So at Education USA, we do help and prep students to plan their departure before they go to the US. There are a variety of ways in which you can stay connected with Education USA. I'm sure that most of you are aware that we are available on almost all the social media platforms. So we are on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Our handle is called Education USA India. And we host a variety of sessions throughout the year, either with current students or with alumni. And we have a variety of alumni fairs, panel discussions, and we host a lot of sessions during the International Education Week, which is during November every year. If you would like us to highlight your success stories, and if you'd like to write an article about your experience or even participate in an Instagram session, please get in touch with the center that is closest to you, and we'd be more than happy for you to get involved. I'd also request my colleagues to post the links to all these specific sign-up sheets and links on the chat box. Education USA also has an app which is compatible both on Apple as well as Android phones. So it's always available for students and parents to download. It's something that's very handy on the go, and you can keep it at all times with you. These are our contact details for all the centers in India. And as I mentioned, if you are a student who's going to the US, you can get in touch with us. Or if you're someone who's just joined the session because you were curious about the topic, you can even get in touch with us, and we'd be more than happy to help you throughout your journey towards pursuing your higher education in the US. Okay, so all of you know the topic for today's session, and some of you might be wondering why this session was included in the Prepathon session, because usually during pre-departure orientation sessions and at the PDO sessions that your US university might have hosted, generally the topics cover themes wherein we prepare students for a life in the US. So to cope up with the socio and cultural differences in the US, how to cope up with the differences in the academic side, wherein you're facing a different environment in your classrooms, your relationships with the professors are different. However, at Education USA, we wanted to go the extra mile. So this session is for students who are leaving and for students who've kind of are returning back to India and thinking about what to do next. So this is a good session for those who are thinking of coming back and pursuing their career in India. Of course, there are a variety of ways in which you can receive career advice. There's the careers department at your university, and there are experts and counselors for this. But today we are really happy to have two alumni who have already studied in the US and have returned to India. And they're here today to share all their tips and strategies for pursuing a career in India. And without further ado, I would like to just introduce our panel. So firstly, my name is Marine, and I'm an advisor with the Education USA team in India. And at this time, I'd also like to mention that my colleagues are helping behind the scenes. So we have Amita, Megha, and Pranita. They will be helping us moderate the session as well as managing all the technical aspects of the various platforms that we are using. So I'd now like to introduce the main speakers of the session. We have Jatin Rothani and Priya Iyer. I'd like to read their bios as well, and I'd like to request them to switch on their cameras so that the participants can see you. So Jatin Rothani graduated from Miami University in 2021 with a triple major in geography, sustainability, and entrepreneurship. He is an innovation consultant and an entrepreneur in residence with She and India Foundation. He helps organizations, startups, and NGOs to innovate sustainably. Jatin's goal in life is to have a positive impact on the world by working on problems of the future. Jatin, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, everybody.
I'd now like to introduce Priya. Priya Iyer has a master's degree in electrical and computer engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology and a bachelor's degree in electronics and communication from LD College of Engineering, Ahmedabad. She is a performance architect at AMD India and works on next generation core architecture. Prior to that, she worked at Intel Oregon for about 5.5 years in their architecture group. Priya is from Ahmedabad. Welcome, Priya, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Miriam. Thanks for the intro.
You're most welcome. So, participants, we have divided this entire session into 3 sections, and we are going to move on to the first section, which is all about setting expectations. This session is about what students should expect if at all they decide to return to India and how they should measure reality versus expectations. So Jatin and Priya, I'll be asking you a couple of questions which is related to the points that are mentioned on the screen. And the first point that I'd like to ask you is, if you could give us and give the participants some of the reasons why you returned to India, or why you thought that returning to India would be good for you. Jatin, if you'd want to go first, and then Priya.
Sure. So one of my main reasons to come back to India was that I wanted to work where impact was most required. Being earlier in an innovation field, with working with NGOs, I'd worked with a few NGOs in Cincinnati and Chicago, where I was working while I graduated and after a little bit as well. And I really wanted to make sure that whatever I learned there, I carry it on, but I wanted to work it where it would matter to me personally. So on a personal note, I wanted to make sure that whatever I do is with a purpose. Now, I wanted to work on a new triple bottom line, which is people, planet, and profit. But I wanted to do it with the country I know the best, and being a geography major and having been studied geography in school as well, I immediately knew instantly that, you know, I need to go back home and do it at the grassroots level with organizations that are really having a positive change on our environment and the people in India.
Thank you. Priya?
Yeah, so I think my reasons are like combination of what Jatin said and a couple of other things. So first of all, when I went from here, I kind of knew that I'm not really going to settle there forever. So that thought was always running at the back of my mind. However, as I got used to the culture there, or like lifestyle there, you always have this constant dilemma of whether you want to really come back or not. For me, the two driving factors were, one is that that my family was here and I wanted to be closer to family in the long term. And second was that being in India gives me the choice to switch careers. So I don't have to really be tied to what I studied in the US, because there, if you do a master's in electrical and computer, your H-1B, like your work visa, is tied to your degree. So it is a little restrictive in the sense that you can't really explore a totally different career option. You can explore related fields, but you can't, like, for instance, I cannot tomorrow just get up and say that I want to do a marketing role or a sales role or a finance role. I have to be doing some form of, engineering, and that to relate it like to my field. So, so that was the other sort of major reason, because I wanted to try other things and really try and see if I can build a career in a different field, basically.
Okay, thanks for sharing. And also the point that you just mentioned about the work experience, which has to be in line with the subject field that you're studying in. For participants who are not aware, Priya is referring to the CPT and the OPT schemes that are available in the US. So the OPT is the optional practical training scheme, and the CPT is the curriculum practicum training scheme. In case you want further information about this, you can always get in touch with an Education USA Center, or you can check the videos on our Education USA YouTube channel. Just type in CPT OPT and you'll get a number of them, just to get a better understanding of what exactly these training opportunities are and how you can apply for them. So thanks so much, Jatin and Priya, for sharing those reasons and leading in line with that same point that you've just addressed. Did you guys also consider any personal or financial obligations? Because, you know, when we go to the US, and we pursue our higher education, of course, it's a big investment that we make, both financially as well as personally, in the sense our whole family is there rooting for us, and you know they're also invested in this emotionally. So what were the obligations that impacted these decisions as well? Jatin, if you want to go first.
So,
Yes.
in the beginning, while you go to the US, it's a different culture. It's different from your family. It's different from what you're used to. But as soon as, you know, as Priya had mentioned earlier, you start living there, you start, you know, getting used to everything as well. So the only time you really get to visit back home if you're studying for an undergrad is during your vacation time in winter or summer. And that is if you do end up going back. And because there's so many opportunities that you can just pursue while being there in summer and winter, sometimes you do tend to not go back for a year or two. That was my case. The first 2 years for my freshman and sophomore year, I did come back, but my junior and senior year, I chose not to come back because I did get a position full time working there, and I continued my job. And there was a financial obligation to it as well, because I was trying to save up more money for maybe a future degree, or, you know, just in general, having been there. I was there on a full scholarship and a departmental scholarship additional to that as well. And earlier I was working as a university resident assistant. So I was constantly working there, and I had my financial obligations that, you know, I don't want to, you say pocket money or you just saving up. I don't want to be dependent on my family for anything. So my obligation was that I need to be constantly, you know, working and studying, and I want to create a work-life balance within that. And my obligation afterwards, my degree was, you know, having worked so much now, having gained so much experience, I can go back home and you know, I don't have a financial obligation hanging over my head that I need to be constantly working. So I can go back home, you know, spend time with some family and start working back home as well. Because first of all, being in the non-profit innovation industry, it's not a lot of stars and kingdoms out there for people who are working here. It's really how much work you put in can never amount to the amount of money you're making in any country, because it's a non-profit field. So making more money or anything was never on my mind. My main goal was to work with a purpose and make sure that whatever purpose I'm working towards really is not, I would not say in my comfort zone, but close to where I grew up. And you know, I can also be outside my comfort zone when I'm back home as well. Just depends where I'm going, whether it's traveling to the Northeast, or whether it's traveling to Jammu and Kashmir, whether it's traveling to Chandigarh. All these places for research interviews I did go when I came back. So no, there was no obligation as well, but there's definitely an advantage being close to where you grew up and knowing everybody, and it's easier to navigate your way around as well. And there was definitely the reward section of it, was that you get to have a great network in India, and you get to really connect with people who are just like you, in other sense that they've also graduated from a university abroad and now they're very successful in India. So you do have a network that establishes within those lines. And on top of that, there's so many people who are willing to help you, not just here, but also back from where you were studying. For example, while I was studying, I was able to connect my firm, Chicago Innovation, with two nonprofits in India to do an innovation ecosystem webinar and a webinar on modern parenting. And in total, we had about 3,000 attendees for both the webinars. And so, instead of thinking about it as moving back, moving there, and rewards and expectations, I kind of try to connect the two sides of my life. That hey, this is what's happening in the United States, and this is what's happening in India. Why I believe both these firms and NGOs can help each other. So my main goal was to bring that knowledge and innovation back home and apply it with my resources and my network that I made over the past 4-5 years in the US.
Thanks, Jatin. Priya, over to you.
Yeah, I'll probably talk about the obligation part first, because it's the amount of money we spend is non-trivial. Everybody knows that. Most of us take a loan, or we spend pretty much our parents' entire lifetime worth of savings behind a US degree. So it's definitely, I definitely considered earning at least what I've spent. So I was clear in my mind that I don't want to return with zero work experience. I want to at least be able to repay the loan that I had taken. And it's faster if you work there, just given the whole currency conversion, right? Unlike Jatin, who worked while studying, I did not. I enrolled in a master's course. I went there, and the first semester itself was extremely overwhelming for me, because when you go do a bachelor's in India, it does not prepare you for, the whole education system and the learning is extremely different there. The approach to how classes are conducted, what kind of assignments you get. So for most people, it's fairly difficult to cope up. So I decided not to take up any on-campus job, because just keeping up with the curriculum itself was a big deal for me, and I just wanted to focus on that. I did not have any TA or RA as well. So what I did end up doing is in the summer, I took up an internship. So I did not come back for the 2 years that I was there for the master's. I had one summer break in which I tried to find an internship, and that contributes towards your CPT. And after that, I sort of was, you can also do a 6-month internship. I think it's up to you on how you want to split it. But later on, after graduation also, I wanted to at least stay for the OPT period, which in STEM fields is now close to 24 months, or maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, you could. So I think it's a good. I think it's a good way to take advantage, because it gives you two things. One is you get experience, and it also gives you some time to recover at least. It's very different for different people. In my mind, at least if I recover what I've spent, then I wouldn't be under pressure to sort of, constantly look for a job as soon as I come back. So that is what I considered, that at least if I, repay the loan or whatever, then whatever I make is more of a saving. And then everybody has their own limit as to how much they want to save, what amount is comfortable in their mind, what amount of savings is comfortable for them to sort of say that, okay, now I'm okay if I come to India and I take a few months break and I figure out what I want to do next. Right. So whatever period it is for any individual, I think they should sort of calibrate that accordingly. Yeah.
Thanks to both of you for sharing such honest comments and remarks. I'm sure students will appreciate that, and they will note it when it comes to their time in taking those decisions. Also, just to answer your question, Priya, that the OPT for STEM students, yes, they do get 1 year, and then they have an option of extending it for another 2 years. So we'll move on to the next point. Once you received your US degree and you graduated and you returned back to India, did you feel that you had an advantage over your other peers and over your other batchmates who were at the same time looking for jobs in India after receiving their Indian degrees or any other degrees from, across the globe?
I can start with that, as I was very recently in this job hunt process as well. So currently I'm working at a nonprofit called Sheen India Foundation as their entrepreneur in residence. And what I really do is I pick up projects from the team that might need any help, and just kind of give them ideas, innovate. And I'm also mainly working on a design and designing the entire camp and a facility for a center for creativity and innovation in a rural village in Maharashtra. We're working with the local panchayat and the local government officials to make that really happen, to get all the permits and the land that's being provided to us by the village itself. Now, how I got this position is basically networking and having the advantage of a US degree is the main reason that that network played its part. While I was looking for more positions, I would, while going to meeting friends, family, friends of friends, you always tend to ask people who you're meeting after so long, or they, oh, what are you up to now? And they ask you, what are you up to now? So in literally in those conversations, things would come up as say, oh, I'm an innovation consultant, and next thing you know is they're calling you to meet someone in their house or meet one of their family members who's into that. And just because you have some working experience in a different country, especially being United States, you can offer your not expertise but a different point of view for how things were there and how things could be here. Everybody does want to hear in that industry. Turns out that there were people from my high school who were doing innovation consulting, who were 5 years or 6 years elder to me, and somehow they got to know about me through somebody, and that being in the high school, and they also graduated from Harvard, and one went to Columbia, so they both knew the value of a US degree as well. So they reached out to me immediately, and I did a short-term project with them. After that, I did a photography project. After that, I did a project with a beverage company. After that, so it just kept on adding up, just because the network from just other people who were also having a US degree knew the advantages of it as well. So it's not only you who realizes the advantage, but it's others around you as well who see that advantage in your education background, and they also want to work with you and get your point of view and opinions in it. Currently, when I'm applying for other positions, as I want to shift positions to a different organization or an industry, I have noticed in the job section profile where they ask, oh, what do we want in the candidate? A lot of them mentioned a a degree from an institute abroad. A lot of positions do mention this nowadays, that they want people who have a degree from an institution abroad. It's not compulsory, but that does put you on a better note and get your foot into the door in the first place as well. That okay, you have a degree from an institution abroad. And I have noticed that almost on every website I have applied to till now. I can say up to 10 organizations right now on the top of my head that do this, as well as governmental and public organizations. So it's not just private companies, it's everywhere. And being in the nonprofit industry, I was surprised to see that they are looking for such height of innovation and in just creative people. And one of the the requirements for the position could be that you have a degree from an institution abroad, and that's very common nowadays.
Thanks, Jatin. Priya, over to you.
For me, I think okay, so it's a little difficult to directly gauge the advantage that I have because of a US degree. The reason is because I worked for a few years and then came back. So when I apply to jobs here, people are looking more at my most recent work experience rather than looking at my degree, which was already 5 years before, right? Having said that, there is definitely an advantage in the sense that they know that if you've gone through the grind of a US education system, they know that you've been molded a certain way. They know that you have certain level of problem solving skills, right? And they just know that you're better geared to take up certain kind of challenges, right? Because the system prepares you that way. So this I so the only metric that I would use is that combination of the fact that I had a US degree plus a little bit of work ex there. To every company that I applied after coming here, every application did convert to a call. So, like Jatin said, it does help you get sort of foot into the door, sort of a thing, right? You'll get that first call because they see your degree and they look at, okay, you've gone to an institute like Georgia Tech, and then you've sort of worked in a semiconductor industry. So at least they want to give a chance to sort of talk to you and see where you are, right? Then wherever it goes is totally dependent on your skill set and experience, interest, etc. Right? But I think in terms of advantage, that's how I look at it. That at least you get the first opportunity to interact with a lot of people. And even if I have to go to a different field, they might not be aware what I'm doing today, like in the semiconductor industry, but they're aware of Georgia Tech as an institute, right? So people sometimes associate that if like how in India we sort of tend to give a higher value to like certain IITs, and we know that if a person is from IIT Kharagpur or something, it naturally gives you naturally tend to have a certain perception that they'll be better geared to handle certain situations and job opportunities, etc. So I think that's how I look at it. In terms of advantage.
Right. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the last point of this section. I know that both of y'all have covered this point somewhat. However, if you could just mention 2-3 top points of what you think are the rewards of a career in India. So both of y'all, 2-3 main points.
First of all, I would definitely say just the progressive tax regime that we have is a great thing. Because if you are like it's so much different, the tax regime there is so different, and here it's so different. So that's one thing that I did notice while starting to work here, that it's amazing. The other thing I would mention is that the reward of a career here is that it's very easy to navigate your day-to-day life, work life. Secondly, the opportunity for growth here, having been studied abroad, just puts you at an advantage at a company, because you kind of understand, and as Priya mentioned, that work experience definitely helps in that. But as soon as you want the opportunity for growth, for example, as of now for me, I wanted the opportunity for growth, and compared to my other peers who did get a degree here, it was hard for them to shift positions in just under a year after working at an organization. Whereas for me, I have only been at this organization for 6 months, and I'm already getting calls from other organizations to join them. So I would definitely say that the opportunity for growth here, if you put the work in, you'll get the results. That's, I would say, the same for everywhere, every country, but here, being a local, being Indian nationality, having a good education background, the rewards just come in opportunities, and the growth after a while, it can be exponential. It doesn't have to be, oh, every day 9 to 5 grind, and for 5 years you're doing something and then you get a promotion, or you're looking forward to that bonus. No, I would say it's much more relaxed. I would say it's much not easier, but it's definitely easier to navigate for someone like who studied abroad. That would be my top points.
I think for me personally, the biggest reward is life here is more wholesome in terms of experiences, in terms of, because there this is up to individuals, but there my life was more revolving around just work and career. And I was missing out on a lot of big events that were happening here with family, with friends, etc. And there have been umpteen instances where I've felt that, oh, I wish I was closer to home, both good and bad situations. So that is the biggest point. The second is I think I have a better semblance of work-life balance here, just given the fact that there it's difficult, like you have to manage everything by yourself, and you will realize that immediately as a student as well. You have to manage your studies, and you have to manage like everything, right, from cooking to cleaning to every single thing. Here you can, at least you have a better support system around you in terms of outsourcing certain things, or even in terms of help from family, from friends, etc. The other thing is freedom in terms of like Jatin was saying, being a national, you don't have to worry about visa issues, which do come in the way, to be honest, when you live for a fairly long period of time over there and you want to make different career choices. There's always a question of, everybody knows that US green card is now taking forever. And so you're pretty much on an H-1B visa, which keeps extending, which has to be renewed every 3 years. So if you ever get into a position where, you want to take just a break for a few months, 3 months, and you just want to explore something else, or, or in general, you don't want to do anything, but you just want a career break for whatever reason, you don't really have the freedom to do that. And even with H-1B, there's always like so many, like my friends who even want to transfer a job are kind of on their toes, because they are like, oh, what if this doesn't go through? What if the transfer doesn't go through? What if the renewal doesn't go through? Etc. etc. So there's some amount of that visa thing which you have to be mindful of. I think it will become better with time, but as of today, that is the situation. So that is the other thing. And and the fourth, the last thing is, I think, just the fact that being here will sort of enables me to do a lot more sort of outside of just work. It allows me to contribute in other ways to to family, or in general to society around me. And that's something that I wanted to have. So I think for me, those are some key things. Yeah.
Thanks so much. And yes, both of you are absolutely right that people have their own personal preferences. Something might work for them and something might not. But I'm sure many of the students who've returned to India would echo the same points that you and Jatin have mentioned as well.
And I would just like to add, the other thing is that in my industry, at least I haven't, like if you are in a tech sort of a role, These days, there's no longer a difference in the nature of work or the nature of opportunity that you will get just because you are in the US. Uh, you know, earlier there was a perception that that MNCs who have a branch in India or an office in India are only outsourcing, the secondary level of work or more like maintenance work or like IT and whatever, right? But that's not true anymore. Um, More and more work, innovative work is going to lower cost geos because it's fairly expensive to hire people in the US. So it's been my personal experience that, when I was working at Intel as well as now, that, the kind of projects that we are getting in India are almost at par or even better than what our US counterparts are doing. So I just want uh, everyone to take away that coming back doesn't necessarily mean that you're compromising on the quality of work or on the quality of opportunities. There are plenty here and there's plenty of good work. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Priya. We'll move on to the second section of the session, which is basically around planning, students planning their careers in advance. And as you can see on the screen, there are a couple of points mentioned. This first theme or the question that I would like to place before Jatin and Priya is basically if you guys could highlight how your US degree equipped you in terms of your subject knowledge as well as soft skills, because both of you all are from very different backgrounds. So if you could just touch base points on that.
I can start with that as well. It was great. The experience really equipped me with how to be a true professional before I even started being a professional. Uh, just the ambience in college, and just like how you talk to your professors, how you talk to your teammates in a group project, or how you have to talk to your other point of contacts in other universities or other organizations while you are in your class. It just adds an advantage because there's a method to everything, and they really teach you that in detail. For example, my sustainability and geography, sustainability and entrepreneurship major classes towards the end included a consulting part where for each semester, for each of these majors, I was a consultant for an organization in the city or an organization somewhere in the US, and it was remote at that time. It could have been in person if let's say COVID was not there, but just that part, being a consultant to an organization while you're a student, teaches you just how to deal with people. Uh, the other thing that I really learned is the importance of how to write emails. And my classes taught me that. My classes taught me how to be professional about emails, or how to tell someone that something's bothering you. One thing that was the most important, and it was actually the bottom line that was we were taught, is accountability. Being responsible for your own actions, and how you need to be very accountable for the duties of your job. Just how you need to be extremely on top of your work, or on top of just your daily duties. And let's say when the accountability comes in is if you do tend to fail in something, uh, they also taught me that failure is perfect. Failure is fine. It does not matter if you fail. And failure is actually something that will lead to success in the future, because once you learn how you failed, you will make changes to be successful. So that is topmost two things that I learned in terms of soft skills. And in terms of personal development, I believe my college had, just in general, too many programs and workshops almost every weekend, other weekend, and they gave every student the opportunity to be a part of it. I myself was able to be a part of a residence hall association. So just student engagement and leadership there teaches you just different duties of your life. And they're able to send you to other universities who represent your own college, and you learn so much just in that. The professionalism at the student level is this almost the same as professionalism as if you're a person who's in your 5 years in your job career more, or like you can see that a freshman or a sophomore can easily speak to a working professional, and they will be very professional, and they will know how to speak with them, if it's via email or phone or video or in person. Just that being taught as a soft skill is, I'd say, that's something that was absent in India up until a few years ago, or even until now, a lot of universities as a subject to be taught, or even as a workshop. There are very few workshops on personal development and soft skills in India, and I believe there could be more, because I was part of the team that actually did a soft skill training program from the US in India while I was in college. So I kind of knew that this is something that's completely absent there, and that really played an important role in helping me move my career forward as well, because it just made me develop such a huge network, and people saw me as a professional and not as a student. And that's a huge thing in my opinion, because when you are seen as a student, your opinion, people will have a different opinion about you and your abilities and your skill sets. But if people see you as a professional, that's just amazing personal branding that you could have, and it will be the most important asset.
Great. Thanks so much, Jatin. Priya, over to you.
Yeah, I think I'll talk first about the subject knowledge part. So my field is extremely technical. So in that end, I think what the master's degree really taught me is learning how to learn, because that's what I'm doing in my career. It's not that everything I studied in college I'm applying at work, right? Not literally, but then I was thrown to this what do you say, like just the level of difficulty going from a bachelor's degree here to a master's degree there, right? Just the level of curriculum, and this you get this enlightenment almost of sorts, that you can't just read your textbook and show up in an exam. That doesn't work that way, So a lot of practical, really hands-on practical training on things, with assignments, with the kind of internships you take. It really prepares you for the real world. And if it prepares you in a way that, basically, if you're put in a challenging situation and you're trying to solve a problem that you know nothing about, where do you start? How do you consume information and actually make sense out of it and really get to the fundamentals, so that you are able to then build on top of that, right? So I think that's how, because here, I mean, most of us grew up in a way that, here are four subjects, here are 4 textbooks for that subject, just study this, learn it by heart, show up in an exam, and that's it, you're done with the subject, right? They'll just give you like tons and tons of research books. You can bury yourself in library all day long, and you can figure out what you want to learn, how much of it you want to learn, how much deep you want to go. It's totally up to you and your interest and, your inclination to learn. So it just opens up this whole, a different way of learning and approaching things, which you're not really familiar with. It can be overwhelming in the beginning, but then with time you will realize that that will almost sort of become your tool, which you will use for the rest of your professional life. So that's the subject knowledge part of it. And, of course, the kind of professors that they have, a lot of them have extremely good industry experience. So, just having access to those kind of people, right, that you can go talk to them about anything that you want. And most of them are very approachable, right? So that just, yeah, so that just sort of opens up, I think, like a different plethora of knowledge in terms of, subject matter, etc. The soft skills part, I think, couple of aspects there. One is, for me personally, it changed my outlook towards things so much. We have a certain perception of how life should be. Like, okay, you have to take up, do this, complete 12th, complete this degree, complete, like it's a very sequential thing. And once you go there, you'll find people in this university, in these universities that come from all sorts of backgrounds. you know like they would have done a dual degree already somewhere, they would have taken worked somewhere, they would have taken a break, they would have taken a sabbatical. And so just it just opens your eyes to the kind of options available. So that you can, it's okay to study engineering and then, I don't know, study like something totally different, like geography or whatever. Anything is possible, any combination is possible there. You can have major and minor from different subjects. You can take subjects just you can just audit subjects if you want, right? You can just show up in the class and be like, okay, I'm just taking it even though this doesn't contribute towards my degree, right? And because the kind of you have just people coming from all sorts of uh, universities and from across the globe. The moment you interact with them, I think you sort of become, you learn how to deal with people coming from totally different cultural context, and that automatically makes you a more tolerant and a more empathetic human being. Because you have certain belief systems, you have certain things that you grew up with, and here you are meeting people from like totally different countries, countries that the names of which you haven't even heard. And you get to learn like their thought process, where they are coming from. So I think that just that kind of exposure is needed, right? That just gives you a much better worldview. The second thing is, other than the confidence that Jatin talked about and the accountability aspect of it, the other thing is they really drill this in your head that you are your brand. So basically, in terms of soft skill, you'll find that all these universities will have career fairs. And career fair is what? It's literally you pitching yourself time and again that here is my skill set. And it's going to every, so you will have stalls where there are employers coming, and then you pretty much stand in a line, get to meet a potential employer, get to know what they are doing, and then they will talk to you for 1 or 2 minutes. And in that 1 or 2 minutes, you sort of have to really tell them what you are about, like what do you have to offer. And it's not easy for everybody. I think for me personally, it was very challenging. But once I went through that grind, it gave me a different confidence level that, okay, I can really talk to somebody that I've never spoken to before, and in a minute or two, really tell them what I'm looking for. And, really sort of in quote unquote market myself, right? Because that is essential. So it prepares you for that real world job market, because the real world job market is like that. So I think, I think those two primarily helped a lot.
Thanks so much for sharing those personal experiences, both from the theoretical as well as the practical side. I'd like to move on to the next point. I know that Jatin has already covered a little bit of this when it comes to networking. But again, if you guys could share your top 2-3 main points when it comes to networking, what should students do and what should students look out for?
I would just like to begin with one sentence, which is, I think everybody should write it in bold letters and frame it, that your network is your net worth. So whatever you do ever in life, your network is equal to your net worth. the more network you have, the more will be your net worth. And that's just a fact of life. Like we all know about Elon Musk, but does Elon Musk know about us? No, because we don't fall into his net worth area. So the people you talk to, the people who are your friends or people who are your colleagues, that's your network as well. Uh, you want to talk to their family members, you want to talk to their friends of friends, that's your network as well. So I would just say that after the second point being, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for help when needed. And just have that self-confidence in you that you can reach out to people, you can talk to more people. And every time I have spoken to somebody who's an alum of my university living in India or abroad, or even an alum of my high school, the way you reach out to someone, you can't just talk to someone and be like, hey, I know I met you here, can you help me with this? No, there's definitely a rapport formation, there's definitely an introduction. And once you take all those boxes, pretty much anyone will help you with whatever you need. Like they will provide you with the help that you are looking for, or maybe if they cannot help you, they will direct you to someone who can, or they will guide you how to manage that problem or whatever is it that you need help with. So that would be my top points for that.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest, I'm not good at networking. Looking back, I really feel that I could have done a lot more when I was a student. And it comes naturally to some people, it doesn't come naturally to some people. Some people really are outgoing and more extroverted, and it's fairly easier for them to reach out to people and reach out in a more social manner or whatever. That's not it doesn't, I'm of the category where it doesn't come naturally to me. So I think it was a very like effort and something where I had to really put effort. Like think about it and put effort. So I'll tell you my personal experience. I started building my network through alumni specifically. So at Georgia, so every college will have an alumni connect group. So I enrolled in that. I sort of got in touch with a few alumni who are working in companies where I'm interested in, right? And they had some sort of a meetup where I showed up. I was allowed to pick a mentor. So I picked up somebody that I thought has a little bit that might be able to help me, or like where I thought that they have the skills that I do not have, so they might help me with building some of those skills, right? So my journey sort of really took off from there, and through that person, I sort of then got introduced to a bunch of other people. My other network was just my batchmates, right? A couple of like batchmates in my own like my own batchmates, or 1 or 2 years junior, senior, who studied in the same time frame. Like they went to places, and then when I was looking for a job, I could reach out to them. Professors definitely help, like keeping in touch with your professors, because a lot of opportunities come to the university. Like a lot of, so what happens is, suppose I graduated and then I started working in a company. When my company is looking for, there are open requisitions, I would go back to my college naturally and reach out to the international advisor or to some professors that I have worked with, right? So those are like part of your initial core network, I want to say. And then as you work, you will really start building network on your own, because there'll always be somebody from your batch working in the same field somewhere, and you'll connect with them, and then you'll through them can get connected with somebody, and that ripple effect will happen. But yeah, I think if you're somebody like me who's not really naturally inclined towards networking, I would say start with talking to your peers and your immediate seniors or something like that. That's a good place to start. Yeah.
Thanks so
And then,
much.
of course, I came back here. When I came back, I had a lot of, by then I already had a pretty strong network in India in terms of, because when I used to work at Intel US, I already had built relations with Intel India, with teams working in Intel India. So when I had to move, I could reach out to them and say that, hey, could I, do you have some opening or whatever? And they were kind enough to make that work, sort of a thing. Right? So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing those comments. I'd like to club the third and the fourth point. So for Jatin, if you could share some early career perspectives since you've graduated in 2021, and if you could share some entrepreneurship advice to students who want to start up or do something new. And also for Priya, if you could share some mid-career perspectives, mid-career and earlier career perspectives in the sense, if you would look back in time and you would look back to yourself when you graduated in 2021 for yourself, Jatin, and Priya 2014, what would you tell yourself in terms of, the mistakes that you made that you see right now? And, what are the tips that you would give yourself?
So first tip I would give myself is that sometimes students, especially students who are early career in their and they've just graduated, they do tend to get stuck in positions that that they kind of want to do but kind of can't do, or kind of don't want to do but are doing, because they think they're students, so we won't find a job, we're just starting up, we're just freshers out of college, and who will give us positions to such people with no experience. And there's always that dilemma that students face. There's always a dilemma that students face. Oh, which position am I suited for? Do I want to do position A, position B, or industry C or industry B? Like, do I even want to do what I studied? So that's a moment in time where most of the students are going through these questions in their head and they just don't know where to start. My advice would be that before you think about these questions, just start. See for yourself. See how it's going to play out. Maybe you like it, maybe you won't. But there's no harm and foul in giving it your best shot, giving it your 100%, because later on, you don't want to be at a moment in life where you say, oh, you know what? I should have done that. I could have been a part of this organization. I could have, joined this position and then maybe shifted within the organization. So there's too many ways around to get to where you want to be, but it won't happen unless you start with it. So that is why my advice would be to start as soon as possible. And that is one of the main reasons I started working during college. After my sophomore year job as a freshman, as a resident assistant, my junior and senior year, I actually took a little 3-month, 4-month break from working anywhere. Earlier, I was also doing an on-campus job in first semester and second semester of freshman year as well. But so having worked the first 2 years of college, my junior year, I took a little bit of break just to find what I want to do next. It wasn't like, oh, I don't want to work anymore. But it is okay to take a break as well, I would say. It's not all about, okay, getting started as of now. If you want to take a break and figure what you want to do, or just explore opportunities, or just talk to people and take that time, as we mentioned earlier, like sabbaticals or breaks or career breaks or whatever, I believe they're totally acceptable in this day and age, and they're totally fine. Only if you can explain if you gained anything new out of that experience. Even if you just, sat at home, but you had your laptop, what did you do? Did you learn anything new online, or did you hear about anything that you maybe have researched about? So there's too many things that one can do, but it's all about just starting and doing it. And personally, I took a break after my graduation as well. So my junior year and senior year, I worked at Chicago Innovation as an entrepreneur, marketing specialist, and just helping people who were going through our incubator program as well, helping these startups. And after that, I did want to take a break and figure out what I wanted to do. So I joined a course where I learned mixology. I mean, how amazing. Like, I had no idea what mixologists do or things. But, my friend told me about a course somewhere. And, one day I just went just to see how it is. And I did it for 6 months. 3 months in person, 3 months online. But still, it was a good thing that I did for 6 months. The next 3 months, I just saw some videos online that they sent me. But the first 3 months, I went in person every day for a couple of hours. And, I just learned how to do it. It was fun. I made so many contacts that I'm still in contact with right now. I made great friends. And then I was like, okay, this was a good thing and got my mind off a lot of things. But now I know what I want to do. So it's fine to take a break and do completely something else or do completely something new. And it's only if it helps you figure more things out, but just do it.
Priya, over to you.
Yeah, I think Jatin covered a lot, but just few things to add there. I think one is that early career is typically about learning, a lot of learning. Mid-career is more that whatever you learned, you apply that while you learn more. Right? So you're upgrading, but you're also applying all the knowledge that you gained in your master's and in your, the first 2-3 years of workings. So I think the first thing when you graduate and you're applying for jobs and you have a couple of offers, you're not extremely sure what you will like. My first advice is reach out to people in those positions, similar companies, similar fields. Really talk to them and get to know what they do on a day-to-day basis, and whether you see yourself doing that on a day-to-day basis. You might not get 100% of the idea, but you will get a fair amount of idea when they explain what really they do and how they contribute and how they measure their impact. You should be okay, and you should be content with that level of that nature of work. And you should be okay with whatever, different industries have different requirements. Some have a lot of field work, some have a lot of office work, whatever, but whatever it is, I think talking to people in that field will help when you're starting out, to get a reasonable idea of what the job profile looks like, not on paper, but in reality. The other thing is the other thing that I wanted to say is, don't pick the first job just based on salary, because there's always a temptation to just look at the monetary aspect of it and nothing else, because you're just starting out. It's very tempting also, but because there's a tendency to, the first job that you take is really important in shaping then the rest of where your career goes, or like how do you branch after that. So along with the monetary component, do give a lot of weightage to the fact that you really are taking up something that is adding towards where you want to go long term. So that is something that I would strongly advise, because that's what helped me personally. The other thing, when you're shifting towards mid-career, like let's say you've been in a job for a couple of years, and the moment you feel that there's a dip in the learning curve and you're only executing for the sake of executing, I think it's a good way to recognize that it's probably a time to shift gears. And then you need to really sit and think what you want to do next. And that is where, the whole point of giving yourself the luxury to take a break and really think about what you do next comes into picture. And yeah, so in the initial phase, like you do not need to be, I think I wish I was not as afraid to switch jobs or to switch positions, because there's always a thing that, oh, this, what if, whatever, for visa reasons or for other reasons, what if things don't work out? I think it's okay to, take that jump if you really feel that the next opportunity is adding value in terms of your personal growth and learning. Yeah.
Thanks so much. I think what you, Priya and Jatin, covered right now have already answered some of the questions that we are receiving from participants. I'd just quickly move on to the last section, which is about social and cultural aspects. If we could spend 5 minutes on this section, and then we can take question and answers. So we all know that, when students, they go to the US, they face a culture shock over there. And, when they've spent a sufficient amount of time anywhere in a foreign country and they return back to India, again, there is that reverse culture shock. So could you share some experiences that you faced and some examples with the participants here?
Sure. One thing that definitely was a culture shock, even, because this whole COVID thing happened and so many things were going on in the world. There was a lot about, I would just say, people thinking that, the United States was very bad with COVID management. And it's just what news media says. So a lot of it was asked you, like I saw a lot of my friends asking me questions about how was COVID in the US, and so you could do that with anybody, I guess. Like, it's personal preferences that as to what precautions someone took. So that was a big culture shock because India was on a complete lockdown, the entire country, whereas you could roam around in the US and you just had to wear your mask and present vaccination card status depending on what state you were in. So that was something that was a new thing, apart from the regular culture shocks that we see. The other culture shock that I saw was in just general work-life balances here. Because when you think about a work-life balance of people and professionals in India, they always take work home. They always take their after 5 work calls, or there's always a 9 p.m. meeting or a 9 p.m. submission for something. And there's just too many things happening all at once at your job. And work-life balance tends to get all jumbled up in that, and you really don't have it. I actually saw that improve when I came back, because I saw a lot of my friends working professionals and this, that. So I saw amazing improvement in their work-life balance. I don't think it's true for everybody. It may have gotten worse in some fields, but for certain fields and certain places, I could definitely see that, okay, that there is a work-life balance now coming into effect here as well. Other thing that was there was just how influential the culture in US is to India, because it is a trickle-down effect at the end of the day. Whatever may be happening there, it might happen here tomorrow or the next year, but it will happen at some point in time. That's just how demographic transitions and just development works, and it's just natural for us to follow other things and other countries as well, and people being influenced by, okay, the culture there and culture here. So I saw a lot of people being influenced by, I would say, politics, big company culture, and even just the corporate culture in the US here and US and here. And I could see a lot of more similarities now. I could see a lot of the things that, how they're done in schools or colleges, a lot of them falling on the footsteps of other countries, especially the US. So I was extremely shocked by that, because I expected that to happen here, but I guess how it happened and when it happened and how quick it happened was something very unexpected. Just being able to talk to your family and your peers, and them being able to understand what you also went through in the US without being there, is a shock in itself. Because you're just like, how could you know that we were what we were going through? They're like, what, it's more or less the same. Like the culture experience of college, or the work experience at a job that you're doing while in college, or just starting after college, or that time that you're looking for positions. So a lot of those experiences was similar, and which I was really shocked to hear, because being such in different geographical positions, in such different cultures, how they intertwine and how they have now become one. And honestly, there is not a thank you to COVID, but there is a part that COVID plays in this, because after everything became online, people were connected more for some reason, because you just a click away then. So that really made a huge difference. And I was so shocked to see how the COVID culture, work culture, has carried on in India. Everything has become hybrid. Distant learning is even more easier than before. And because of everything is hybrid and online, uh, people actually get angry when you do something over a meeting that could be an email. Or people actually don't like when you do a video call that could have been a text. Or so I have been seeing those things as well, that and that's definitely adding to people's professionalism as well.
Priya, if you
Yeah,
could, yeah.
I think for me, the biggest reverse culture shock was just that I was not in, because I came back after almost 7 years. I think just the fact that things had become way more expensive in India was the first biggest reverse culture shock, because I was, sort of somehow expecting that things would be frozen in time, but yeah, everything was 10x more expensive. Um, there was some initial adjustment that needs to be made, because you're geared to in public spaces and in social settings, you become used to behaving in a certain way, um, which I think implies like following rules more closely once you are there, right? You're far more, cognizant about the fact that you don't want to break into a line, or you don't want to get ahead of people. Just small things, right? If you are uh, during COVID time, like you would be much more strict about following the whole 6 feet, whatever social distancing in the US. Like they would have, they would put markings and people would just follow it, right? So when you come here and you suddenly see that people are not that, keen about just following rules in general, that there is a little bit of uh, frustration that you'll experience. But for most people who have grown up here, that is just, I would say, it's just a matter of getting used to it. It just takes like a couple of months, and then you're back to you're back to that mindset of, okay, this is how things work here. It's just that you've lost touch and you've forgotten about it. So there are things like that, like just processes in general take more time here. Whenever you have to like get a license or etc. Things like that might be a little bit. You'll be irritated a little bit more if you're very used to seamless things just working seamlessly, right? Predictability in terms of getting from point A to point B in terms of commute, right? We all know that traffic in metro cities here is like you can't really predict when you will get from point A to point B, right? So those kind of my inconveniences will bother in the beginning, but I think just like how you got used to things there is the same way you'll get used to things here. I think it's just a matter of time, because if there are other things that you really care about that are working for you, then these are just sort of experiences that you learn to cope up with over time. So that is one thing. The other thing that I was pleasantly surprised with is how much tech has really permeated everywhere. Right, we are. I was just so pleasantly surprised to see how every small vegetable vendor and the Larry person has like a GPay, and a QR code, and how really cashless we've become as a country. And I think we are ahead of the US in that sense, at least in that area. So those kind of things, and it's really good to heartening to see those kind of really positive things as well. So yeah, both ways, I think. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks so much. We'll move on
Oh,
to
sorry.
the
One
Q&A.
last thing is you
Yes.
said about work environment. Fortunately, in my industry, the work environment is not that different. It could, I cannot comment about other industries. At least if you work for a tech company, or if you're working for an MNC, they make sure that culture is more or less the same across sites across the globe. So there isn't a whole world of difference for me in terms of the work culture here, as opposed to what was there. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. I'm just reading through the questions that my colleagues are also sending across, and I'm going to merge some of them together because they're on the same topic. So some of the participants would like to know if, when you compare the salary and the pay scale structure from US versus India, do you see a very big difference? I'd leave it to either one of you to answer the question.
I guess when you adjust for living cost, inflation, and taxes, salaries in both countries are apt. For example, if you are living in New York, let's say, and you're making whatever amount of X hundred, like let's say you're making $100,000 in New York. For New York standards, that's actually extremely low. That's actually very low. But if you're living in city, let's say in Ohio, that's perfectly great. That's actually more than the usual, because an average salary in Ohio may be like 60,000 onwards, whereas in New York it's 150 to $200,000. So just living costs within the US vary at such a large length that comparing it with the entirety of India is a little, I would say, not apt for economies of scale, or it's just not direct comparison cannot be done. When you talk about, I say somebody saying lifestyle or just sufficient salary here, I would say that salaries in India starting out are low like any other place. And depending on where you live in India as well, a higher salary could also be a low salary. It just depends on your personal preferences as well. Like, do you cook a lot at home, or do you have hired people to do things like, for example, laundry, driving, and etc. Or are you doing all those things by yourself? Or are you eating out more or eating less? So there's just personal preferences that come into your salary being sufficient to you. There's definitely a factor of where you live as well. Largely in India, people there's a trend to live at home for a long time as well. Like, people do tend to live in their parents' house, or they'll have a separate floor or room. Like, we do have that concept here of multi-family homes, which is so popular. Whereas in the US, you do tend to move out because that's the trend there. You don't live at your parents' or your family house. You tend to move out. So for that standard of life, that salary or their expenditure has to be more, because things are way more expensive. Second, labor is way more expensive in the US than it's in India. We are a country with ample amount of labor available, actually more, and we need like, the wages are definitely lower in our country than there, but it's also because we have so much labor available. There's resources are actually cheaper as well. For example, if you went to buy bread, eggs, and milk in a grocery store in the US, you would probably buy all three in the price of what you pay for one there. Like, I could get bread, eggs, and milk for the price of just eggs, what I pay in the US. And I could get all three of my groceries in India for the amount of X that I bought in the US, like for that price. Like there's definitely a price comparison of products and just things that you take. So when we talk about just your money transition and salary transition, I believe it depends on your personal preferences and how you like your lifestyle. And it's not totally dependent on the salary, but I would say that starting salaries are definitely lower.
Thank you. Priya, I'd like to hear from you as well. If you could also add another point to your answer. So there is one question from a participant, which is specifically for you, because it's a bit of a technical question. Basically, they want to know if you have any idea about the salary scale when it comes to the semiconductor industry. If you could share some insights into that. Yeah.
Okay, so to start off with, first of all, comparing absolute numbers, we all know is not a great idea given the cost of living is different, currency is different. Let's not compare that, right? Second, so can you have the same quality of life? Like, can you sustain the same lifestyle that you were sustaining in the US? Yes. Salaries, I will only comment on the tech industry. I don't want to comment on other industries because I do not know. So for tech industry, yes, salaries in India are very competitive, and it is possible to lead the same amount, the same lifestyle as such that you had in the US. Okay. Roughly the ratio, if you convert your dollar amount, to a rupee amount and then you compare it, I have to say that you have to be prepared that here you will at least see like basically your Indian salary in dollars will almost be a third of your US salary. But the Indian salary in Indian context, and this is again for tech industry comment, that the Indian salary will come to about 1/3 of your US salary. But it's not bad enough from an Indian context. Because given the expenses here and given the cost of living here, at the end of the day, what you have to see is the percentage of your salary that you were able to save, let's say, right? Given that you are leading a similar lifestyle, what is the percentage you were able to save in the US versus what is the percentage you are saving in India? And that's roughly about the same. At least if, if you're somebody with couple of years experience, you need not even be like really like 10 years worth of experience or anything. Even if you like come back after a year or two of experience, I think it lines up pretty well, at least in the tech industry. And the I guess your question was about the semiconductor salary in India. It varies a lot, depends on the experience. And
in the US, would you know if?
Oh, in the US, yeah. In the US, if you are starting out, and if you are on the West Coast, it's pretty much your starting salary is somewhere near like 90 to 100K.
Okay, and once you come to India with that experience,
so
what
I think in India, the semiconductor industry, sorry, just a second.
No problem.
So the starting salary of semiconductor industry, I'm not fully aware because I didn't join here as a fresher.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not up to date with what are the starting salaries as of today.
Sure.
But I think if you come back after like couple of years of even like, let's say 2 years of experience, you can expect anywhere from like 15 to 20 lakh per annum in India.
Okay. All right. I think we might go slightly overboard our time, maybe 5 minutes overboard our time. I hope that's okay with you.
Yeah.
I'd just like to move on to the next question. Can you tell us, how the university alumni network helped you, if that's something that you did tap into, and how did the careers department in the US university help you as well?
So my position that I got in my my junior year and senior year at Chicago Innovation was through a scholars program at the university. And right before I joined that, I was a part of the career centers, whatever mentoring program, and where I had a mentor. So the mentor would always connect me with their connections first. Second, the mentor would really help me be like behave like a professional, and help me with my resume, help me with emails, cover letters, and just how to approach an application. So in terms of that, the Career Center also made a class for all the students to attend throughout once at least in their college life, and just make sure that during that class, people are learning how to approach a job, not rather how to apply to jobs. So it was more about the approach than just apply, because application you can just send with a click. But approaching the people who are responsible for that jobs, and afterwards, what happens? It's the interview, phone interview, video interview, and in-person interview. So there's just various things about it. Now, I did have an in-person interview for my Chicago position. So I went to the career center and I asked them, what do they expect? What am I supposed to do? And they had an open door policy. So I could just walk in and walk out anytime, and just take an appointment, or call them, or do a video call with them. And they really taught me how to be a professional in an interview. And their tips as to what to do after an interview were also helpful. The part wherein you're giving an interview and then they ask you towards the end, so you have anything to say to us at the end? Like, that's our golden time. And I never knew that. I thought if you ask way too many questions, if you say the wrong thing, or what is the wrong thing, what is the right thing, and I was just confused as to what that is. And I knew exactly what to say during that golden time that they gave us. Oh, is there anything you have for us towards the end, or any questions you have for us? So that really played a huge important role in that. And my career center is actually responsible for most of the soft skills me and my peers developed at college, because they were constantly doing resume reviews, professional development sessions, workshops. They would come into class and they would explain things. And so it was not just that, oh, like just advertising on social media and just that. There was a lot of also them coming to us directly. I would get regular emails from the career center about open positions. My departments had their own career legs where somebody was responsible from each department or each major to send a list of open internships and students to each student almost every month or week. So that was all being done by our career center. And just keeping an eye on that made me aware of this scholars program that was providing internships to students in the summer, through which I got hired full time. So like, it was just me being active on their website or reading their emails properly that really paid off. And I would say they work day and night to make sure their students are getting the positions they want. And I'm still friends with one of my career center mentors. His name is Matthew, and I almost like I catch up with him almost every like second month or so, just to see what's up. And he's a great guy, and he's still there. He's still helping me out with suggestions, and with email suggestions or resume suggestions. And even though I'm not a student, I'm an alum. So he's really making sure that not just students are being helped, alumni are also being helped.
Priya, do you want to share anything in terms of this?
I think just in terms of how alumni helped, yeah, definitely, because I connected, like alumni was my starting point. I connected with somebody who used to work in Cisco.
Mhm.
So she really helped me a lot in terms of preparing for interviews and, some of the soft skills that you need, even though she really didn't, because our subjects were different, it wasn't really about the core course work, but it was more about, like some soft skills. Just give me 1 second. Sorry.
Sure.
So Yeah, but I think alumni helped me mainly, even later on, for me to reach out when I was applying for jobs. I knew a few folks, and that's how I connected. And they kept telling me about any opportunities that came along. Um, Career department, in my particular case, not so much. Although they were, there was an international student section that kept sending us opportunities. Yeah, in even after graduation, they still continued to sort of have a community where they would keep posting about anything that they come across. But I think alumni is in a way better because they know you personally, they've interacted with you. So even in terms of referral, if they have to refer you to somebody, since they've interacted personally with you, that sort of helps a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. I think we will close the session now since we've already gone overboard with the time. But on behalf of Education USA, I would really like to thank Priya and Jatin for joining us in this session, sparing your valuable time and giving all these interesting insights and facts about the experiences that you've had so far. I'm sure the participants and the students found it really useful. And I'm really thankful that Priya and Jatin, you've shared your LinkedIn profiles on the chat box as well, so that participants can get connected with you directly. I would like to share thanks with all the colleagues who are still working behind the scenes with me right now. And of course, last but not least, all the participants who've joined us today. We wish you all the very best for your new journey and keep in touch with Education USA. Thank you so much and have a great evening.